I can see it in your eyes. If you didn't invade, didn't pillage, whatever would you do?
Hey there, my name is Alex, I am the Silvermont, and in this video we're going to discuss a character from the first Dark Souls. One that has no dialogue throughout the series, and it's entirely possible to miss his existence altogether, for he only appears as an invader. Indeed, he's usually the very first invader most will come across, the Darkwraith, Kirk, Knight of Thorns. We'll start with his name, Kirk being one of those relative few in the franchise who has a real name. The old meaning of the name is church. Remember the Kirk hammer in Bloodborne? The church hammer. And it's of Celtic origin, perhaps even Old Norse if we go back far enough. It could also mean from or near the church. But any way you slice it, there is no apparent obvious connection between the name and the character. Certainly, you could make wild assumptions such as Kirk being born in or growing up near a church of the Way of White, but so far as I can see, there's nothing immediately interesting beyond the fact that we encounter him in a church in Dark Souls 3, the Cathedral of the Deep, and a cathedral is, when you get down to it, just a big church. So let's move on to his in-game appearances and what they could signify. Kirk is an interesting character in that his armor set apparently tells you just about all you need to know about him. Armor of Kirk, Knight of Thorns and notorious member of the Darkwraiths. A dense patch of thorns grows from its surface. It is a fitting item for the murderous Kirk, for by simply wearing it and rolling one can damage enemies. And in Dark Souls 3 the weapons and armor tell us much the same, the main difference being the knight himself is known as Longfinger Kirk. Is this the same Kirk, or somebody who has taken up his name and armor, honouring the old Darkwraith? Well, Dark Souls 3 never confirms it one way or the other. This could actually be the same Kirk, or somebody just honouring his ways. In my opinion, they are supposed to be the same character, on account of their rather similar seeming motivations. Speaking of, let's go back to the first game. Kirk invades the player 3 times, first up in the depths, and then upon entering the demon ruins, and finally just before the Bed of Chaos. Whilst seemingly random locations at first, they start to hint that perhaps Kirk has some sort of relation with the Witch of Izalith, her daughters, or Chaos in general. Let's look at the most immediately obvious connection. Chaos is empowered by humanity, and Darkwraiths seek humanity, collecting it for the primordial serpent, Karth. Humanity can be freely given and stolen between individuals, and it is likely that humanity is a fragment of the Dark Soul, the unique 4th Lord Soul. Presumably, Karth wishes to gather humanity for the purpose of reforming it. Slave Knight Gale appeared to be pursuing a similar goal in the third game, in order to deliver the blood of the Dark Soul to his niece, who intended to create a new painting, a new world, free from the misery of the cycle. Just what Karth wanted it for, who can say? Despite the game presenting Kirk as no more than a murderous and backstabbing invader, there was always a strange hint that there may be more to him. After his last defeat, Kirk's physical body seems to be found next to Quelaag's sister, the Pale Fair Lady. It is possible to communicate with this Daughter of Chaos and enter into a covenant with her. Feeding her humanity appears to ease her suffering.
Oh, thank you, Quelaag. It feels wonderful. It really helps, it does.
Is this what Kirk was doing all along? Was this the reason he entered the worlds of others and plundered their humanity? To deliver it to his fair lady? If so, was this out of simple empathy, or did he seek the chaos sorcery she had access to? The shortcut to Izalith? As it happens, whilst the exact reasoning may be left vague, we do know that he more or less was entering a covenant with her from the radio interview with the developers some years ago. The guy with the thorns, Kirk of Thorns, is a member of the Egg Princess Chaos Servant Covenant, and he's trying to rob humanity to offer. If you kill him for the last time, his corpse will be near the eggs, and you can loot it. Incidentally, that interview was translated by somebody named Kalesmith, and has a lot of interesting information in it. Did Kirk abandon the Darkwraiths after encountering Quaylag's sister, or did he discover Karth's intent and lose motivation? Karth remarks that even those strong followers of his in the past all failed him.
They failed me, every last one of them. They were strong, but saw not the truth. I am certain that you will prove different.
Nonsense. Are you mad? This is deplorable.
You would rather be a slave?
Does the truth mean nothing to you? This is unacceptable, impossible, unthinkable. Oh, enough with you. Farewell, pitiful, unknowing fool. I shall return to the abyss and await the true Lord of Men.
Even when leaving the Covenant, one can still invade with cracked eye orbs, of which anyone can carry a great deal. Considering Kirk invades 3 times, it's extremely possible this is what he was doing. When successful, he would offer up his newfound humanity to the fair lady, easing her suffering. Did the murderous Knight of Thorns suddenly develop a conscience? Or does he have a soft spot for crippled maidens? After all, the long finger Kirk we encounter in Dark Souls 3 appears to be a finger of Rosaria. Long finger would suggest he's the longest finger, the middle. Leonard was the ring finger. How appropriate that Kirk is the middle finger, which is, after all, often used to gesture very rudely. And just like he was offering up humanity to the Daughter of Chaos in the first game, now he's offering pale tongues to Rosaria because she really needs a bunch of tongues. That's how it works, right? She's a speechless god, so if we give her enough tongues, perhaps something good will happen. As for Rosaria, some believe she is Guinevere, punished by having her tongue removed. Although I must admit I am doubtful as to her relationship with Guinevere. There is definitely a connection. Rosaria's soul gives you access to a miracle of Guinevere. Both lounge in similar ways, and Leonard loiters about Anor Londo, where Guinevere was originally found. Both Rosaria and the Dancer have miracles granted by Guinevere, so if you ask me, it makes sense that both of them were once Guinevere's maidens, handmaidens, perhaps cousins of the royal family. The Dancer was warped by Sullivan, and Rosaria had her tongue removed, perhaps as a punishment for some perceived crime, perhaps even removed by Sullivan. The Cathedral of the Deep is associated with Aldrich after all, and Aldrich himself is associated with Sullivan. The Chaos Daughter and Rosaria are both suffering, but whether or not giving Rosaria tongues eases her suffering is up for debate. But Kirk appears sympathetic to their cause. Perhaps he believes the means justify that cause. Whilst he's murdering undead and stealing their humanity, can we really say he's attacking the innocent? Why, is anyone innocent in Lordran? Kirk's actions are quite evil, but does it soften the blow to know the reason behind them? Does it ultimately make any difference if he is murdering out of sociopathic rage, or murdering for a cause he believes good? What do you think? Let me know, and until next time, take care. Ciao.
Quaylag, please, sister, do not cry. I am happy, really. I have you, don't I?